Hi everyone, welcome to Finding Joy in the Mundane. I am your host, Aya Nichols, and today I have an extra special guest, Robert Schoolfield, and I'm really excited to have him on here today because I think his perspective on the world and mental health is so important and interesting. So Robert and I both work as peer support, but also Robert is an artist, and that's something that I found was amazing because there's so much mental health and cultural aspects that go into art. And so I had to have him on the show. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. So we've had this conversation before because, I ask you a million questions all the time. About just your mental health recovery and then how you use that in your day-to-day life now to help other people. Would you be able to share just a little bit more about your just mental health journey and how it got you there and how art was kind of in the background helping you get through that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'll start it off from when I was younger. I just struggled with mostly depression, or I'll just get right into it, like feeling like I knew who I was. And I know that's kind of a lifelong journey for everybody, but there were some factors that played into that too. Some of that being, my upbringing, situation with my parents, having cancer as a child. So several things played into that. But where I noticed it first was just with depression or feeling different. And really just thinking a lot. I've always been a thinker, so I've overthought things and just had, almost a negative perspective of myself at times. So that's been a struggle for a lot of my life. But where it kind of got worse was when I was in my teens and later teens. A lot of that started to escalate. So, being that I am an artist, I did live kind of in that kind of lifestyle in the more reckless sense, or I wasn't really living a healthy lifestyle and things like that. So that really uncovered a lot of the issues that I later had, kind of brought them to the surface.
Yeah.
And so that was, I'm 35 now. That was when I was in my later teens and throughout my mid 20s. I would have, it got really bad for a while. I was experiencing a lot of psychosis, a lot of depression, anxiety, but I was just not okay mentally, and I was out of touch with reality in ways. And it was this, just this narrative that I had kind of created in my head over time, that of how the world works and my place in it. And when you have all those things hidden for so long, it's really hard to get it out easily, because it's such a personal thing. You can't explain, 20 to 25 years in a short while, when you're going to get help and they're asking you all those questions. It's like you're almost so overwhelmed because you haven't been dealing with that stuff for so long that you don't know where to start sometimes. I mean, even you asking me the question now, it's like I could see where I could go so many different ways with explaining it, but that's kind of the easiest way. And I didn't have a bad upbringing. I had a really good family in a lot of areas, but I was kind of raised in sort of three different parts of that family. It was my mom and my stepdad, my grandparents, and then my aunt's house. We were there a lot too. And I had sort of different versions of myself at each of those places. So I think that also sort of added to not really knowing who I was. But where art ties into that is that it was a thing that I had done my whole life. And just to backtrack on that a little bit, is when I was at my grandparents' house, my grandmother's an artist. So that's where I got involved in art from an early age and sort of carried it throughout my life. But that was always something, not the only thing, but that was a big part of having a space to be free almost, to sort of express who I was or the things that I didn't know how to express. Yeah, so that's a little bit of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the power of art, is that it allows you to be multi-dimensional. You don't have to just be one person or one type of person. And you can be both dark and bright at the same time. We've all seen a painting like that. Actually, I've seen some of your paintings, hint, hint. And a lot of them have that sort of darkness, but there's so much light within them. And I think that's what really captured my interest, because it really does show the inner soul of what we're battling. And I think society now, especially, it almost seems like we can only be one way. and you have to choose that way, and you have to label it, and then you have to stick by it and then defend it. And to me, like, that's been crazy because we're human beings. Like, we grow and we change. Who we are yesterday is not going to be who we will be tomorrow. And we're meant to do that. But I think especially with the mental health world, when you're trying to make these changes, a lot of people look at you and they just see one thing. Like, they just either see your mental disorder, see your struggle, and they label you that, and then you label yourself that. And then all of a sudden you become that. And I think people get stuck in just being that they forget that there are so many different things that art can express so well. And I really think there's so much power in like art therapy. I especially have experienced art therapy where you draw things and whatever. But even when I was a child, I think that was the most like profound type of therapy I've gotten. Because like I was able to see my own emotion outside of me for the first time. Instead of me trying to explain it to someone, I just had to like put it on a piece of paper and explain it to myself. So that's why I'm really interested in art and like being able to express yourself and see yourself within it and through it. Because I don't think we see ourselves in reality anymore. By that I mean our image of who we are and who we should be is so distorted by so many different things, like expectations and then culture and then media and everything, that we can't see ourselves clearly and we don't even know how to feel ourselves clearly. But then being able to just create something that represents that small part of you and then seeing it, I think it gives us more clarity. So I think, and that's why I wanted you on the show, was because I think art has been something that has basically rooted you in who you are. And the only way you were able to express yourself fully, even though you were learning how to express yourself and learn yourself throughout all these different times in your life, art has been the one thing that's been like that steady thing. And I think art is the thing that separates us from animals. Like our ability to create something like that.
That's interesting.
I really do. And I think that's God-given. That's actually very much part of God. You know, because you hear all about like heaven and you think of the chorus, all of the choruses singing. And you know, that can be boring. But before like pop, before like all of the media we have now, like to think of the actual like just physical act of like creating something like that, when it was even hard just to write.
Yeah.
And then taking that, and cavemen would draw on the caves as a way to express themselves and who they are. So like it's a biological thing in us to be able to like make this like entire expression that's beyond just like words, beyond just actions, and it's like comes from the soul. So I think the more people are willing to like connect with that, the more they'll be able to find themselves. But that's hard because it's a very vulnerable place.
Can be.
Yeah. And what was that like, creating all these different paintings? You mentioned before that you have over 100 paintings. I can't even think about creating one painting. I have one canvas. It's this big and I have nothing on it because all I can do is draw stick figures. And you know, I'm not an artist. I have my own talents. That's okay. But like to think that you have all these different paintings that express all these different emotions, all these different aspects of you and what you've been through, and then putting them on display. That's so hard.
I feel like there's so much I can say. There's a whole lot to unpack there. I love everything you just said, by the way. It's sparking all kinds of thoughts in me and taking me back to a lot of thoughts as well. Something that stood out about the cave paintings and also about just me not really knowing who I am. You're right. Art has given me a sense of purpose and it has been like a constant in my life. So I am really grateful for that and the ability to do it. But the cave paintings specifically, I feel like the human experience is so similar. Like we're all similar to each other in a sense that when I think about cave paintings, I think about people a long time ago who might have felt similar to me in that they had similar thoughts and feelings and they were expressing that, you know, in their own way. And I view art as the way that my art looks is directly unique to me in a sense that my voice sounds this way, your voice sounds that way, my art looks that way. When you make something, it has its own look too, you know. So that's another thing that I love about it, is that it is so personal and unique to who we are. And even relating it to nature, you were saying like people change and we change in that we can be put in boxes or anything. And it is so it's just reflective of life in general. Back to even what you were saying about dark and light. Those are things that I feel like most humans go through some extent. And I feel like being an artist why people are drawn to art or music or anything creative is that I feel like as an artist, you create the things that, or you express the things that other people have a hard time expressing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people are drawn to it, because it's something that they can relate with, like the deepest sense of who we are. Life would be really hard without creativity.
I would almost say it would be meaningless.
Yeah, it wouldn't be fun.
It wouldn't be fun
Yeah.
in any way.
Yeah.
The first time I experienced like art was in high school. We went to some art museum in DC, and getting to see all these different ways these artists like expressed like their deepest hurts or their deepest joys. And the fact that it did speak to me, like you said, and I did feel something. And back then I was experiencing such a hard time, like with going through foster care, getting adopted. Like I didn't feel anything and never wanted to feel anything. So for me to go and then feel that was shocking, because for the first time I wasn't just feeling something of me, I was feeling someone else's pain and relating to it. I think that's when I first realized like the power of it. And now that I'm thinking, like, there's so much, especially with AI, there's so much content now being created with media that's so worthless and meaningless, because a robot or just the creation of it has no meaning. It's just to create and to produce money, versus an artist who pours their heart, pours their soul into their painting. And you can sell the media part for like $1 because it costs nothing to make it, but it costs you so much more than just the materials to make it. So for that to show, you want to be appreciated for that, and you want to be compensated for it, because it took time, it took energy, it took yourself. You're sharing yourself with that person. And I think not having a deeper understanding of that really affects artists now, because like they're like, why do you want so much for your painting when AI can just draw it up, But the difference is that this is from a human being, and they have emotion, they have soul. All that energy like goes into it, versus this lifeless thing. And I have the lifeless thing, so don't get me wrong, because I'm cheap. But like, to think every time I would see someone else's painting that's been hand drawn, hand painted, taking that time, every stroke, I think that is priceless. And I don't think that you get enough recognition for it. So hopefully this will help you just a little bit.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you're right. There's something just so much more interesting about something handmade. There's more story involved. And with what I make specifically, I use a lot of layers. And I do want to answer your question too. You're asking about the vulnerability aspect of making art. I do want to touch on that some. It kind of does tie back into what I was saying just about expressing the things that, the human experience. And if you're an artist, then you have to stay true to that. I think like that's the main point, is to be vulnerable and honest, and whatever you make of it, it's almost not up to you after that point. It's like you did your job by making something, and I'm not thinking about other people's opinion about something I'm gonna make. I mean, I might to an extent, but it's not governing what I do.
What do you think is like the number one thing, if there is one,
that I think about when I'm making something?
Yeah.
I think there's a multitude, but on just like a technical level, I'm thinking about balance and color. I'm thinking about, where does this painting feel complete and where does it doesn't. And everything in between that is, I'm thinking about how to go about it, like shapes and color and what I can add in certain areas. But then I'm also, there's part of me that my mind wanders, and I'm thinking about anything at all. I mean, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Memories, the present moment, the past, the future, dreams. It's very, think about this when you've ever like zoned out and you're like thinking about all kinds of things, but nothing at the same time. And
like when I'm driving.
Snap out of, no.
Right?
But yeah, so like when you're in that place where you're just kind of like thinking about so much or daydreaming, it's like I'm kind of in and out of that place where I'm actually thinking about the painting and actually making it, and then other times where I'm just thinking about so many other things. And I do think that ties into spirituality and a reflection. It's a representation of life. So it's like, you mentioned nature, animals and things earlier. So I use that I've used that before where, you know, a tree just does its thing. It's pretty predictable what it's going to do. It's going to grow. I mean, there can be different ways it does, but for the most part, it's going to grow. It's going to have seasons. It's going to do what it does. Animals can be similar. You know, they might be more complex in ways as far as behavior and things, but with people, I think we're unique in a sense that we can decide to change or do something different at any minute and make that decision. And that, I mean, that's a big debate too, as far as like if we do have control or free will in that kind of way. But just for the sake of conversation, I think that
we definitely have a say in it.
We can decide to do something different with the choices that we have each moment.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a big separation. But either way, like it's all reflective of, I guess, the human experience, the good and the bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Man, the human experience. I almost don't want to even do it.
Sometimes I'd rather sleep.
I'd rather be a plant. Honestly, I would much rather either be a plant or a cat. Preferably my cat. That is well taken care of and doesn't have to do anything. But honestly, I think we are more like plants than we are like just like the natural animal. Because like the natural animal, like their habitat, unless something drastic happens, doesn't change. And their actions don't change. They're going to go get up, eat, survive. Mm-hmm. That is their life. Versus a plant, there's so much expression that comes from it. And it depends on the season that it's in. And there are seasons that it has no expression where it dies, but it's not dead. It shocks me every time when I see a tree that was full of life in the spring. By the time it comes to winter and the snow comes, completely dies and has nothing on it. And then spring comes and it's full again. And it's like, how did it do that? Where did it get the resources? Why did it have the resources whenever the snow was coming, you know? Mm-hmm. And there's science behind it. But like, I think that's the way we are, where we change with the season in our life, where there are moments where we die and moments where we bear nothing but ourselves. And then there are moments and seasons where we flourish and we produce so much. But whenever we put the expectation on ourselves to always be in that flourishing state, imagine if we required a tree to always be providing fruit, to never have that chance to like go dormant, go into the winter. We would never ask a tree of that because we know that's not possible.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, it's also making me think about a plant that you like trim down and you cut it off at the ground and then it still sprouts things out the side and continues to grow. It's, you know, that resiliency. And I mean, that's a good reminder of what you just said, because I mean, I definitely struggle with that, thinking, you know, what's the next thing that I have to do or accomplish or something like that. And I think it also normalizes our mental health. I don't know if it's realistic for us to be like excited or happy or overflowing with joy 24/7. I mean,
it's not.
Yeah, I think we go through seasons, and it could be even throughout the day or different from moment to moment, the way that we feel. And I don't think that's wrong or bad. I think it's just part of it. And if we can learn that or learn about ourselves and learn how to cope or how to take care of ourselves in those situations, I think we can just experience a more full life or a better way of life, at least. I think that ties into recovery somehow. I see.
100%.
Yeah.
Because part of recovery is just learning how to take care of yourself and live in this world in the best way you can. And I know with my recovery, there are days that, you know, I'm killing it. And there are days that I'm not getting out of bed. Mm-hmm. And by the Lord's grace, like I have more days that I can get up and feel like I can handle the day. Mainly because I've now learned like the things I need to do for myself that help me get out. But also because like I know that I can have a bad day. I give myself the permission to have a bad day, and knowing that there are like the outside people that I'm responsible to allow me to have a bad day. And you know, because like I'm the type of person that gives 110, 20%. So I feel like at the very least I've given 150% most days. At the very least I've made up for one day. Mm-hmm. You know? But employers or whatever don't, in this society, even just in relationships, like you can give and give and give, and then you can't give one day, and then they blame you for not being able to give that 150. Mm-hmm. And then now you feel guilty over it. And then it makes you not even want to give at all, because why would you? They didn't even appreciate the 150 you've been given for the past, like God knows when. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people struggle with that and now are trying to find that like balance and realizing that, you know, there are times that I can't give that much. And that's okay. And having that be more normal, having the fact that we need to take a mental health day. Like people make so much fun about that, where it's like sick days with the flu versus like a mental health day.
Mm-hmm.
I think a mental health day, I can work through the flu. No problem. Sniffing, fine. Coughing, fine. I'll show up. As long as I don't have a fever, I'll show up. But if I'm having a bad mental health day, when I show up to places, it's not good for them. It's not good for me. Nothing is being accomplished. I guarantee you that. Because I'm not being helpful. I'm pouring out with nothing. And then I'm hurting myself. And then the next day, I'll have nothing to give.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very least, if I took that day to be able to like take care of myself and like know that I'm just going through it and that's a normal human experience and tomorrow will be better, I think it will really help people realize that like you can have depression, you can have anxiety, but not have to struggle with that every day and have that define your entire life. Even though it did at one point. I think for the both of us, like our mental disorder defined us for so long in so much of our life. And now, especially like with the peer support aspect, I think it defines a different part because it defines like the strength that I have instead of my weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that. Like I find a lot of comfort and strength in that I can show the people I work with that like it's possible to accomplish your dreams. It's possible to have a family, take care of your family, take care of yourself, and have bad days and struggle with depression and struggle with anxiety and all the different things. So I think that's why I've been wanting to do this series, to just like kind of normalize the fact that you can live with mental health and have issues with your mental health and still be a great person flourishing and then having seasons of dying where you need help.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change like how strong you are or how creative or what you bring to the world. It just means you're having a bad day.
I think it's part of the recuperation, because at some point if you're just continuously pushing yourself, then it becomes counterproductive.
Yeah.
You're trying to like constantly fight through something. Sometimes you need the rest. When your mental health comes into play, I mean, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to take care of yourself. And I think also it is a long journey. Well, it's a never ending journey. There's no arrival space where you think like, oh, everything's okay. I can, you don't have to like keep yourself in check in certain ways. It does get easier. I think it does. But I don't think it's anything that ever goes away. It's like we still, it's like being hungry. You feed yourself, but then you're going to get hungry again.
Yeah.
So like there's going to be something else that comes up and you're like, okay, how do I handle this? And the more you learn about yourself, then like I said, the more you know how to cope with it or handle it. But yeah, at some point it becomes counterproductive to just overdo it. And I think you also have to learn your limits. And what I mean by that is you start to realize like your energy level, what you can exert or give before you're just like totally drained, and learning to pace yourself in that. That's something, and that's hard to do at times too, because the demand of life. So sometimes it's like, well, I have to do what I have to do.
Yeah.
So really learning to pace yourself in the moments where you're not having to rush, because there's going to be days when there's more responsibility. And those are the days, hopefully, that you can give more of like the 150% or, 100%, and kind of reserve yourself on days where, maybe you can kind of coast through the day and not overdo it, thinking that I have to accomplish so much. Life is so fast paced.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't prefer to be that way. I prefer to be more relaxed and slowed down and enjoying my life, because back to kind of like my personal story, I thought that I had to hurry and get to the next place. I was like never content where I was. I was always thinking about the next thing I needed to do or could do, or the next place that was fun that might not have been even fun, looking back on it or whatever.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because like I can 100% relate, and to the point where like I ruined experiences for myself.
Same. Yeah, me too.
And that's what like it sucks, because like I remember I waited till I was 23 to finally get to finally start dating. So I was already wanting to rush it, and I did. All I did was just rush it and then be anxious about the next step, which is engagement. The minute we got engaged, then I was just so obsessed with the wedding. And then the minute the wedding happened, then there was nothing for me to obsess about other than living. And guess what? I fell apart that same year. I mean, I don't believe in coincidences, so what am I supposed to do with that? And it was because like I was living my life waiting for that next thing to fill me instead of just allowing like my everyday life to fill me. And you mentioned earlier about like with food, like, you know, you're going to eat, you're going to feel good, and then you're going to need to eat again. Mm-hmm. It's never going to end. Mm-hmm. Until the day we die, we're going to need to eat.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I learned that the hard way. But it reminded me of something, and it was funny that Jesus says that he is the bread and life. And that's the two things that sustain us every day and will sustain us till the day we die. Like, we will never not need bread and water. So like, I just love the metaphors that he uses because it is so relatable and it's on point as God would be. But like, you know, I have to appreciate it when it's done.